Hello and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got some news coming out here for you regarding Russia. So we have this story that Russia is threatening to strike British military targets in Ukraine and abroad. Now they are warning the United States, Britain, any countries that are involved in Ukraine right now in regards to this because there's lots of talk about wanting to strike targets in Russian territories. Now, the U.S. is thinking about doing this with Ukraine, about giving them permission to strike targets in Russian territory. And we also had that story about maybe a month ago of UK's Foreign Secretary David Cameron visiting Kiev in Ukraine. And while he was there, he talked to Volodymyr Zelensky and told him that it was okay for them to use British Storm Shadow missiles or any other equipment that they give them to strike inside Russian territory. So there's been a lot of provocative actions from the West, and we've been seeing Russia respond very aggressively, doing tactical nuclear drills, in their country right along the border of Ukraine, preparing to go to war with NATO, and making lots of provocative statements too, and telling them, don't even think about doing this. If you strike our territory, it's World War III, basically, is what I'm hearing. So we're hearing lots of talk about this, about allowing Ukraine to strike inside Russia's territory, and we're going to talk more about that, why they want to do that as well. Okay, so this is Maria Zakharova. She's a foreign ministry spokeswoman for Russia, and she came out and said that Russia will target British sites if UK supplied weapons are used by Ukraine to attack Russian territory. Now, she's even saying that they'll target not only Ukraine, not British targets in Ukraine, but also abroad, okay? Also in other countries. Now, what countries would those be? Other than maybe the UK, I don't know if, I'm sure the UK has bases in other NATO nations. I know they share bases together and station troops all around each other's country in different NATO countries, right? But obviously, what this means to me is World War III, okay? If Russia were to strike a NATO country, obviously Article 5 would be enacted, and then it'd be World War III from there, okay? But for them to go after British targets in Ukraine makes sense, but for them coming out and saying that we will strike British targets in other countries as well, or wherever where they want to, basically, that's obviously huge escalation here. So that's why I wanted to cover this story. So we've got a few things to go over here. I want to show you this article here on Daily Express, okay? It says Russia threatens to attack British targets as World War III fears explode. Russia's threatened to strike British targets if UK supplied weapons are used by Ukraine to attack Russian territory. This just coming out today. Moscow's issued a stark warning with Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stating that Russia will target British sites if UK supplied weapons are used by Ukraine to attack Russian territory, sparking World War III fears. Zakharova stressed that British targets on Ukraine's territory beyond its borders could be hit. This follows an earlier warning after UK's Foreign Secretary David Cameron supported Ukraine's right to strike inside Russia using British arms. It comes as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged NATO leaders to give him permission to strike Russian territory with missiles. So that's a big story lately, is Zelensky pushing for the West to allow him to have the permission to strike Russian territory. And not only that, but he was even calling for NATO countries to come over and assist whenever they come under attack. So whenever missiles start flying into their country, he was saying, you guys could just send F-16s from your own countries, fly them over here, shoot down the missiles, and then just go back. Kind of like what they did for Israel, what the U.S. did for Israel when they came under attack by Iran. Okay, he wants that kind of protection for his country too, and right now he's not getting that. So that's what he's talking about here. Ukrainian officials have for months pleaded with the country's Western partners to supply it with further sophisticated air defense systems, especially U.S.-made Patriots, so Kiev's forces could fend off Russian air assaults that have pummeled the country during the war. Civilian areas as well as power grid and military targets have repeatedly been hit. Speaking to the New York Times, Zelensky said, "We have our own weapons, our own drones, and we use them, but I would like to note that we do this for defense. And what we have always asked for President Biden, and not only President Biden, but the leaders of many countries, that we want to use the weapons for defense." He goes on to say, "How do we respond when they strike our cities? Their ability to strike from a distance is such because they are stationed in the villages nearest to the border of Ukraine with Russia. They strike from there, knowing that we will not return fire, knowing that they are using civilian populations as cover because their weapons are located among the civilian population of the Russian Federation. But they proceed calmly, understanding that our partners do not give us permission. So, what he's talking about here is that Russia is setting up their bases and their military equipment all along the border of Ukraine and Russia, and they fire from inside Russia. Okay, when they launch their missile attacks, everything is fired, hundreds of kilometers away sometimes, and Ukraine cannot shoot down these planes that are hundreds of kilometers inside of Russia or far behind the front line. They can't target them. All they can do is shoot down these missiles. But if they had, excuse me, permission to target inside of Russian territory, they could go after these warplanes that are firing missiles, or they could go after the headquarters that are lined up all along the border of Ukraine and Russia for the Russian army, and multiple military targets. They could be targeting Russian troops before they even get into the country, because right now they only have permission to use these within their own borders. So that's what he's talking about and why he wants to push for this. And here, when we talk about ATACMS or HIMARS, or we talk about artillery shells or relevant missiles, Storm Shadow, Scalp, etc., we do not have permission to strike the territory of the Russian Federation, their military locations, headquarters, etc. It's the same for air defense. How can we protect ourselves from constant strikes from Russian territory? They strike with missiles from Russian territory up to 100 kilometers away from the point in Ukraine or the border of Ukraine. How can we protect ourselves? We can either strike the missile that is entering the Ukrainian territory or strike the aircraft before launch. To strike the missile, we need air defense. To strike the aircraft, we need appropriate weapons and permission, which they don't have. So I did a video yesterday talking about all of this talk that we're doing right now, and there was a foreign secretary, I think is what he was. I forget his exact title, but I think his name was Michael McCall, and he was speaking with Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and trying to encourage him to allow Ukraine to attack targets inside Russian territory, because it's the Biden administration that's stopping this from happening. The United States Congress, is willing to allow them to do that. They put no restrictions on the weapons when they allowed Ukraine to receive these. But the Biden administration is the one that's basically holding Ukraine back from attacking inside of Russian territory. And what he stated was that the Biden administration was making Ukraine fight with one arm behind their back. Okay, is kind of what the analogy that he was using. And that's kind of where Ukraine is at. Okay, they're stuck fighting with one hand behind their back, and they cannot strike inside of Russian territory, all because of the Biden administration. It's not because of anybody else. It's primarily them that's stopping them from being able to, if you want to consider it, defend themselves. Okay, they want to be able to defend themselves, but take the fight to Russia, put more pressure on them, maybe even push them back or whatever they might be able to do. So this is obviously a big problem for Ukraine. But at the same time, now look at the escalation that we're seeing here. In order for Ukraine to even do that, it's going to push NATO closer to an engagement with Russia, is what this is going to do. And it all has to do with the West supplying weapons to Ukraine. Okay, these are NATO nations supplying weapons to Ukraine. So this is essentially NATO fighting Russia through a proxy, which is Ukraine. Now, we obviously don't have direct engagement combat between Russia and NATO, but this will get us closer to that and potentially put us right in line with World War III or some major escalation between this war and between Russia and NATO, excuse me. And that's what I worry most about this. I want Ukraine to be able to defend themselves. I'm sure most people probably do want them to defend themselves. They were attacked. I understand that. But at the same time, it will definitely put the whole world in a very dangerous position, because if this thing turns into World War III, all of our lives are going to be flipped upside down. And I hope you're all ready for that if that comes. I hope you've got, basic supplies and things that you need. I recommend all the time, like a water filter at least. You can get one from Walmart. I always recommend the Sawyer Mini. It's a great water filter system. It's easy to use. It's compact. And it can filter up to like 300,000 gallons of water. And you never know if one day you might need it, okay? Water systems can be shut down. And, you might not be able to have access to clean water, and you're going to need something like that to be able to drink water. And water is much more important than food is. Not that food isn't important, but you can last much longer without food than you can without water. So yeah, I just wanted to bring this to your attention, share this news here with you. Let me know what you think about this down below. Should Ukraine be able to strike targets inside Russia? Should they not be able to? And if they are able to strike inside of Russia, do you think that Russia's response will be a big one? Okay, let me know down below. That's going to be it for this update. If you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. And also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, I hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.